Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and my guest this week is Reggie. She runs the Etsy shop, Reggie's Dolls. Reggie has been selling on Etsy since 2007, so she's like almost one of the founding members. I don't know that. I'm just guessing. And to date, she has over 13,000 sales in her Etsy shop. She went full-time in 2009, and we're going to talk about how she did that and the circumstances surrounding her transition and much more. So, Reggie, thank you so much for being my guest, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm so happy to have you, especially having someone who's been on Etsy and seen so many changes. I have so many questions for you about so many things, actually. But before we get into it, can you just give us some background about you and how you discovered Etsy and what you sell on Etsy?
Well, in 2007, I started with I drafted my own design of a kind of a kimono style doll clothes outfit, and that's what I primarily wanted to do, was doll clothes. And I had done a lot of research, and I had found that I wanted to do it full time, and that was my dream, was to work at home. And I contacted a lot of doll clothes makers that I found on eBay, and it wasn't good news. And they would say, well, it paid for my fancy sewing machine, and I really wanted to make a living, and I wanted to work at home and spend more time with my children and be available. Mm-hmm. And they, anyways, I just decided that I was going to start it. And while I was working my other job, and so I would come home sometimes at 11 o'clock at night and fill orders. And it was slow. In 2007, I started out real slow, but one person found me, and she was a cloth doll maker, a Waldorf cloth doll maker. And my daughter had been in a Waldorf school, and so I was familiar with Waldorf dolls. I had made them, and I had them, and we ended up working together. And her product went viral. Her dolls went crazy, and we were in a couple of magazines. I think it was Mothering magazine, for Best Natural Toys for 2009, 2010, I think. Uh-huh. It was my clothes and her dolls, and so that was how I started, really kind of on her apron strings, because the people would buy dolls from her, but they would come to me for clothing. So then in 2009, I was able to jump and bravely go full time, knowing that I didn't know anyone that ever made a living on selling doll clothes. I have been able to. And I haven't checked recently, but on Craft Count, I was the #1 doll clothes seller in the US for years and years.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
So, yeah, it was, you think that you're like, well, no one's done this, so this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
But I did it. So it's been amazing. And a lot of changes have happened. Yeah. Lots of changes.
I can imagine. And what you did back in 2009 with that doll seller is now what is happening on social media a lot. Now, they'll call it collaborating with an influencer. That's essentially the same thing, but that's what you did before it was a thing. And that's what helped to propel you into becoming a full-time. So do you now make dolls and clothes, or just the clothes?
Yes. No, I started out I only started making dolls about 7 years ago.
Okay.
And before that, I was only a clothing maker, and I realized that I was spending too much time hunched over a machine, and I wanted to be able to sit back and do handwork and crochet a wig for a doll. And so I started making the Waldorf dolls, but only the last 8 years.
So,
And then
okay.
I've gone on to other dolls since then.
That's what I was going to ask. What are your most popular selling dolls, and can people just request any kind?
Pretty much. And I use Etsy to organize all that. I have custom listings in my shop.
Yeah.
And then someone can go look, and they can look at examples of my work. Then they can message me, and they could say, I would like to order a doll, and I would like her to have red hair and blue eyes, and I want her to have a green dress. And then I set up a listing for that. And then sometimes they'll make payments. So we'll set it into 2 payments or into 3 payments. And then when the doll is paid for, then it actually goes on my list, and I work on them in order. And it can be 8 to 12 weeks that
really?
somebody is waiting. Yes. I just finished a doll today that took a little over 4 months.
Really?
To get,
was that the only one you were working on for the past 4 months?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay,
no.
okay.
No, I do other things. I have a couple of wholesale accounts that
Okay.
I do with other people, and like I'll make things for other people because I like that, because I'm not photographing and listing, and my purpose is to stay off the computer. And so if I can bundle a box of doll clothes together for another maker, I'll do that sometimes. And so I do have some wholesale accounts. And then I also, I work on them in order. So if I have, 12 dolls ahead of her, then she has to wait.
And people are okay with the long wait times?
Oh, yes.
Wow, this goes against everything the Etsy Seller Handbook says.
Yes, I have been on waiting lists for a doll maker for 2 years. Lots of people have.
Oh, wow.
It's
Okay.
it's a whole different world.
I was just about to say it must be something that's understood within the doll collector community.
Yes. Well, if you want a doll from a certain maker, you wait.
Wow.
And you also will order, like, I'm pretty sure my Christmas is already, I'm about to close my customs down for Christmas.
Oh.
So they'll order 6 months ahead for a Christmas doll, and sometimes then they still can't get in. So and that's handwork.
Yeah.
That's handwork. But I like to do other things. So before I started making dolls, I love to keep 300 or 400 items in my shop, so that it was kind of a shopping experience. And so if people had a doll, they would come in, and they were different sizes, and they'd say, well, I have a 12-inch baby alive. And so then they could go and they could put together like this little wardrobe for this doll. And to me, that was so fun. And ever since I started making dolls, I haven't been able to do that. I always tell myself, I'm going to work on clothes and fill my store. And I can never get to it. But I keep thinking someday I'll be able to.
That is, I'm sitting here amazed, because everything you're saying really goes against what I've read in the Etsy Seller Handbook. They promote having many listings to give your shop more opportunities to be found. It promotes having a short processing time in order to attract sales. And so I guess there are outliers. And in this case, obviously, what you're doing is an outlier because there's a community that you're serving, a very specific community that just understands how things work.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And for instance, the doll Blythe, that doll, I don't sew for that doll, but that's a huge community, and they have a different vocabulary. They don't call it a custom order, they call it a commission. And
like an art piece.
Exactly. And so it's kind of a subculture. But when I first started on Etsy, my sales, this was before Facebook. So my sales were all from Etsy. And I was at the top. And then I got on Facebook, and I remember I was sitting in the dentist office with my daughter, and somebody said, Reggie's shoes are the only ones that stay on the doll's feet. It was on a Facebook post. And I didn't know it at the time. And I'm sitting there and my phone is going cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And I had sold $1,000 worth of doll clothes. And at the time, some of my items were $5. And I sold $1,000 worth of doll clothes before lunch.
Off of Etsy or Facebook?
It was a Facebook post that sent everyone to my Etsy store.
Oh, wow.
One comment sent everyone to my Etsy store. So Facebook is so powerful. I can't believe how powerful it is. But since then, since then, I have my own customer base. It's word of mouth, and it's from Facebook and Instagram. And I don't really feel like at this time that Etsy drives any customers to me. Like my customers are usually people that I've seen them in Doll World before. And lately I started doing reborn dolls, and I went to a few doll shows, and I redesigned a cloth body because I'm a cloth doll maker. I redesigned a cloth body that I preferred because I didn't like the one that the reborn ladies were using. And then now I'm selling that to other reborn artists. So my market base right now is changed to about 50% of it is other artists.
Yeah.
And they are also doll collectors. So it's just interesting how everything, Etsy makes changes, and then our business will make changes too.
It sounds to me like for you, because you have a following and there's a community, and the community is very well connected. For you, Etsy is where they can come and buy. But
yes.
But amongst themselves and in the community, word is passing around. Now, you mentioned Doll World. Is that a conference or a magazine?
There's doll conventions.
Oh.
So there's doll conventions of all over.
Okay.
Like there's also teddy bear conventions, and there's reborn, and my girlfriend and I put together a Waldorf doll convention a couple years ago, and so and they're so much fun. The COVID thing has put them all to a halt.
Oh,
but
yeah, I bet.
It was so much fun to go and just be with your people and network, and and it was really, really fun. So hopefully someday we'll be able to travel again.
Oh, I pray so. So I'm going to look up Doll World and then just put a link to it for anyone who is interested. Now, I have a bunch of questions just based on what you were saying. First of all, you mentioned when you do a custom doll, you break up the payment into two. How does that work on Etsy? How are you able to split a payment into two?
It's super easy. All I do is if a doll is $500, then I will put a photo. It's typically not of the doll.
Okay.
It's of something else. And it will say custom listing for Connie.
Okay.
And then there's two of them.
Oh,
And so
okay.
whenever she wants to, she will go and make that payment. And then whenever she's ready, I don't deal with any of it. They just go and finish the payment.
Okay, okay. Well, has anyone, after so they pay, then you start the doll, you finish it. Has anyone not gone and made the second payment?
No.
Okay.
I have had a couple of people say that something happened, their transmission blew up. But that's, I think, two people have either lost their job.
Congratulations, you just made a sale.
I did. I'm turning my phone back off again. But they, just a couple of people I've refunded their deposits.
Okay.
But it's also, if they can't make that second payment, they can make it in 6 months. I don't care.
Okay.
Whenever they're ready. At this point in my business, I use Etsy to organize my business. And as the orders come in, I know what I'm going to be doing that day. And I really like that. I've tried to leave it before and start my own website or just sell off Facebook.
Yeah. How did those pan out?
It doesn't work for me. Because I don't want to have to message people and go, here's your tracking number and I mailed your package today. But instead they can just go, Etsy tells them what the tracking number is. Yeah. There's a lot that they do that if you think about leaving, you realize, no.
Might not be worth it for you. Now, not everyone is fortunate enough to be in that type of a niche. For you, and I'm guessing just from what you're saying, it was a series of events that led you to find your niche. But having found it and knowing, how you got there, is there any advice you can give based on what you learned retrospectively to someone else who's listening to help them find a niche, like really niche down to like a very tight community, like the type that you found that, is just constant?
The only way you can really find that is by really looking inside yourself. Like I used to ask myself, I kind of played this game with myself. If I had $1 million today, if somebody just gave me $1 million today, what would I do? What would I want to do? And typically that's what you're supposed to be doing, whatever that thing is.
Oh, okay.
Even if it doesn't make you money. So I knew that I wanted to make doll clothes, and I knew no one else. I couldn't find anyone that had made a living. And I knew that I was going to do it anyways, because I was going to pretend I had $1 million and I was just going to do it anyways. It's kind of like writers do that. Like they're like, I don't know why I'm going to write, but I'm just going to write.
Yeah.
And so I think if you just pretend you have $1 million, and then what do you want to do? And sometimes it's you want to play with trains, or you want to write a book, that's the thing you're supposed to be doing.
So what if it's something that doesn't make money? Then what?
That's what I did, because when I started making doll clothes, it didn't make money. And but I stuck with it, and then it all just fell into place. So even if it doesn't make money, you should do it.
Okay.
Because that's your heart telling you to listen.
Yeah.
And it changes too, because I remember for a while I would ask myself, if I had $1 million, I wanted to go to school, because I didn't get an opportunity to go to college.
Mm.
And so I thought, well, I don't need $1 million to go to college, so I'm going to go to college now. And then after a couple of years, it changed, and I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to make doll clothes.
That sounds like so much fun. I want to make doll clothes. I know I can't, but I would like to.
know-
But speaking of which, are you worried about competition? Is that something you even think about at all? Or is there enough room in your niche, or your products are unique enough that it's not a concern for you?
Yeah, that is a problem.
Oh.
And I've had to really roll with the punches, because if I design something and nobody else is doing it, by noon that day, 4 people can be throwing that up. Like, it's putting out something that I'm doing. If it's like, whatever it is, like if I make a pair of jeans for a doll and cover them with embroidery, and the next thing I know, 4 people are making jeans and they're covering it with embroidery. So you just have to keep going, and you just have to ignore it, and you just have to keep going. And I typically will find a doll that I like, and I'll want to sew for that doll. And so, for instance, there's a doll out from a Spanish company called Paloriana, and it is an old doll company, and they're making these beautiful vinyl dolls for children, and they retail for around $50.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this little Facebook page where these women are cutting up socks to make clothes. And it just made my heart sing, because I remember in the old Waldorf days, women were doing the same thing. There was nothing out there, so they were cutting up socks. And so I did a sock tutorial on how to make tights for your doll out of socks. And so I found this group, and it grew. This just happened last month. This group grew from 200 women to 3,000 women in weeks. And this is a trendy children's doll that's beautiful. And so I bought some, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be fun. And I was like, I'm going to sew for this doll. Not only am I going to sew for this doll, I'm going to produce patterns for this doll, because nobody else has any.
Yeah.
And so I just jumped on that Paloriana bandwagon. The doll is actually called Mini Cane. And they are going to be the next Christmas Cabbage Patch. They
you
already
said
are.
Mini Cane?
Yeah, Mini Cane. Mini Cane.
Like King?
Minikane.
Oh, Mini Cane. Okay.
Yes. And so, and that's a children's doll, but women are so enthralled with them that they're buying them for themselves. It's a chubby little baby. They're just adorable. And they're about 13 and a half inches. Well, nobody has done patterns for them yet. And hardly anyone is sewing for them. So I started doing it, and I'm too busy to really pour myself into it like it deserves. But my friends started buying them, and people are starting to sew for them. And I think there's really enough out there for everyone. It's unnerving when you do something and then someone else, does it right away. You're like,
I would imagine.
Yeah.
So. But it sounds to me like you're really good about staying on top of trends in your niche. How do you stay on top? Do you subscribe to industry magazines? Do you belong to membership groups or organizations about dolls? I know dolls are huge, but specifically for you, how did you know about this Mini Cane?
I think just social media.
Mm-hmm.
and because some of my customer base is the 30-somethings that are raising children, and they were coming up in my social media, And then I just fell into a group, a Facebook group that I watched explode.
Mm.
So it's just, yeah, I've always kind of had a hunch about trends. And so,
Sounds like it. Yeah.
for instance, just this week, Mattel came out with a Baby Yoda, and it's $25, and it's on Amazon and Walmart, although they're having trouble shipping right now.
Uh-huh.
And it doesn't have any legs. And so I took this Baby Yoda and I made it a new body, and I put it in a preemie Carter's outfit, a little boy's Carter outfit. And my body is super posable. And so I put him on his tummy and I scrunched his butt up in the air and I took some photos. And then I just happened to find a Facebook group with 75,000 Baby Yoda fans.
Oh my goodness.
And I
That's like heaven right there.
And I posted this picture of this Baby Yoda with his butt sticking up with a teddy bear on his butt. And it's had about 1,500 likes. I've never had a photo anywhere on Facebook get that much attention.
Now, do you link that back to what you're selling? Tell me you're using that for traffic to your shop.
You know, you have to be subtle about it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, Facebook groups.
And
yes.
so, yeah, and so I didn't want to be like this spammer, you know.
Yeah.
And so I just posted the picture, and then people said, "Where do you get this body?" And I said, "I'm a cloth doll maker and a reborn artist." And then I left that alone, and then they will hunt me down. And they will message me and say, "I saw your doll. How can I get one?"
Yeah.
And
okay.
so far, I think I have sold a dozen of them.
Wow.
And
nice.
That's why I'm waiting for them to come. They're taking a long time. But you take them all apart, you strip them down, you repaint them, you put a magnet in the mouth so it will hold a pacifier, and it's just adorable.
Wow. I tell you, it's the things you learn. Well, the things I learned. I'm like, what?
I know, it's a whole world,
It's
isn't
a whole
it?
world out there. I'm telling you. How do you determine how much you're going to charge for the different items? Because you sell patterns, you sell clothes, and you sell the dolls too.
Well, my dolls, I will compare to the going prices.
Okay.
So I'm a fairly new reborn artist, and I take classes on everything all the time. I love classes. And I'm a fairly new reborn artist, and so my prices for my reborn dolls are a little bit on the lower end. They can sell anywhere from 300 to thousands. And so
For one doll?
yes. Mm-hmm.
The reborns?
Yes.
Wow.
They can sell for $20,000.
Now,
Yeah.
okay, tell me how the value is placed on each of those. Is it an individual thing? Like if someone wants you to recreate a particular look, or what's responsible for that wide range?
It's your experience.
That's what I
And
thought.
and also your demand.
Okay.
So if you can be a brand new reborn artist and go into crazy high demand and get your prices up real quickly. But if you are an old reborn artist and you're not evolving, you're going to stay at the lower end forever. So it just depends on the artist. And one thing I started doing too is on my Facebook page, my business Facebook page, every Friday at noon, I go live, and I do. And I started doing it at the beginning of quarantine. And it was amazing because everyone else is just, sitting at home. And so I go live every Friday at noon, and I talk about what I'm doing and what dolls I finished. And once in a while, I will have a doll for sale. But it's been really fun to connect like that. And typically there'll be only 20 people watching me.
That's not an only. The 20 is a nice turnout.
It's between 12 and 20. 20 is on the high side. And
yeah.
It's between 12 and 20. But when I go back, those lives are viewed around 300 to 500 times.
Wow. Yeah.
So I feel like just making that personal connection with people too really helps. I mean, it's all part of the picture, Etsy, Facebook, Instagram, all of it is.
I have to say, you're one of the few people that I've talked to, at least in recent years, who Facebook is still working well organically for them. I know, like, if you're good at Facebook ads, Facebook can be very powerful, a very powerful driver of, traffic and sales, but that involves spending money. But in your case, you're not doing any ads. You're just doing a regular business page on Facebook and showing up live.
Yes. And I never trusted their ads. So I never felt like, I never trusted their ads. I never felt like they would do anything for me. And I know Etsy's ads did for me in the beginning, and then they stopped. And there's been twice that, in the beginning, that Etsy would make some changes and my sales would completely shut down because they were dependent on Etsy.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on here? And then I would find out that they changed the algorithms or they did something.
Yeah.
I never knew what it was because I just got busy and went to work.
So you would never make any changes in your shop or in your processes in response to what Etsy was doing?
I did try to learn SEO.
Okay. How did that work for you?
I don't think it works. I feel like I can't. Well, you know what though? My niche is pretty small.
I was going to say, I think for you, because your niche is so small, it's so targeted, and word of mouth is huge. I think for you, you don't necessarily need to worry about driving traffic using, systems that work in the online space when nobody knows you.
Right, because I'm not selling a T-shirt.
Exactly.
And so I hadn't even gone and looked at Etsy. And so a couple weeks ago, I just put in Waldorf doll to see what comes up. And it was beautiful. Like, I know that people are saying that there's a bunch of junk. It's not handmade anymore. And so, it just depends on it is in Waldorf, it is handmade there.
Because you can't get around that, I assume.
You can't get around it. Yeah. Right. So it depends on really, what you're looking for. And, So what I saw, it was beautiful. And I loved all the shops and what was and my
that's
stuff
so funny
was
that you don't normally look at Etsy and then you go and look at it and it looks so foreign to you. It sounds like.
Isn't that funny? Yes. I do shop on Etsy a lot though. Okay. I buy right now because I can't go to a fabric store. So I shop on Etsy a lot, but typically I'm looking for fabric.
Okay.
And so I just go on and look for fabric and sewing supplies. So I do shop on it a lot. So
just backtracking a bit to Facebook. Now I know a lot of Etsy sellers are on Facebook. Are there maybe one or two tips that you can share about how to use Facebook effectively without necessarily having to spend money. And it could just be what we've said already, just showing up and you show up live once a week. In addition to that, is there anything else that you would recommend that's working for you on Facebook that you think other Etsy sellers can replicate within their own niches?
Yes, I think that trying to post once a day, to keep people's attention, they want to see what you're doing, and they even want to see a work in progress. Okay. So even if you don't have something done, you can take a beautiful picture. And I don't do that anymore. I need to. I try to tell myself to post something every day, but I haven't been good about it myself. Okay. So, but okay. I think,
and that seems easy enough to do.
Yep. Because if you think about it, if you think about the pages that you love, there's something going on every day on that page.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's probably the most important thing you could do. You shouldn't do it more than once, because then it doesn't come up. It gets clogged down. But one post a day will get seen by your people.
And Facebook is the only social media platform you're on?
No, I'm on Instagram also, but it's always kind of an afterthought.
Okay.
And I have been getting business from Instagram, which surprises me. So I just haven't, I tend to just work. And so I try to, when I started listening to your podcast was so that I could get more done and stay off my social media.
I'm glad it worked as a good distraction.
Yes, it is. It is. You don't have to watch anything. You can just listen.
Yes,
so
yes.
I find I'm a lot more productive then.
Yeah, that's why I enjoy podcasts too, because my eyes are not, if my eyes are focused where they need to be, then I can get stuff done as opposed to video.
Yes, I do too. Yes.
Do you ever find sometimes that you get into ruts, and I'm guessing not now that I asked the question, because you're booked out till, Christmas already. So it sounds like you might not have time to, or even the mind space to get into a rut, because you're constantly creating or making something.
I think I probably do, because I keep coming up with new items. And so I probably do. Like things, what, my girlfriends and I, we call that a rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And I feel like rabbit holes are really important. So if you are you get up and you're just like, I really want to make this certain thing, I give myself permission to do it, because that's the spice of life.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it'll bomb, but sometimes it's your bread and butter item for the holidays.
Yeah.
And you don't really know unless you make time to try it.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of Etsy also, is that you can say, I really want to make polka dotted shoes, and you can see what happens when you put polka dotted shoes in your shop. I love that, because you could try a new thing out every day if you wanted to.
Now, so Reggie, you've been on Etsy since 2007. So you're what I would call a veteran seller, a seasoned seller. You've been on Etsy for a while. What advice would you give to other sellers who've been there for a while, who've been on the platform, about just what it takes to stay the course and be successful or find success on Etsy? Because sometimes I know with the changes, like you said, sometimes changes will affect your sales, but you didn't run away. So what's your advice for others?
I feel like you constantly have to work on your photography.
Okay.
And you constantly have to evolve with trends and colors, trendy colors. And
when you say trend evolve with trendy colors, do you mean following things like, I know there's something they release every year,
what is it called? It's not Patreon,
it has a P. Yes, I was going to say
Pantone color.
Pantone. Yes.
I have followed those, and I find that you can tell by watching your target market. And that is essentially, for me, it's women in between 30 and 60. For instance, we all became completely obsessed with rose gold a couple years ago.
Oh, because Apple puts it on their phones. I'm kidding.
It's beautiful, and I don't think rose gold has gone away. And rose gold and mustard, those are going to be my colors again for the fall. I was just talking to a girlfriend about it. They were my colors last year, and I think the year before.
And was that just a personal preference, or was this a trend that you saw?
I think that people still love rose gold.
Okay.
And so even though Pantone has moved on and given us new colors that they say are the trend, I'm not so sure if people are ready to let go of mustard green and rose gold yet.
No. Yeah. Okay.
But you can learn a lot from just watching the trends, like even on Pinterest. I was looking at a Walmart ad, and it was beautiful boho, soft colors. And I was like, wow, I was surprised. But definitely there's a trend going to boho for sure, with pom-poms and rattan and soft, earthy colors right now.
Okay. Some of those terms that you use don't even make sense to me. So I think I'm so far behind the curve. But I know they'll make sense to people listening, or,
They will, especially if this is aired in September.
Okay. Yes. What's something that you could tell someone looking back that you think really helped to set you up to be successful on Etsy, that is someone else can replicate in their own Etsy shop or their processes?
I think just watching the trends and keeping your head down and staying out of the drama and working hard and working on your photography. One thing, this pertains to a question you asked me a minute ago. One of my regrets in my business this long is that what I did was I created work. I created a job for myself, but I didn't necessarily create a business, because if I'm not working, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't make me money, except for I do have about 10 patterns in my shop. And so I feel my regret is that I didn't focus and do more patterns. And even right now at this very moment, I really need to do patterns for the mini cane doll that's very popular, and there are no patterns for it. And I don't want to. So it takes a lot of discipline to do that. And it's not what I like to do. Even though I pay someone else to do them for me, I still don't want to do them. And that I regret not working harder on. I should have 500 patterns in my store right now, and they would just it would be a business that at that point.
I see what you're saying. And is the reason that you think patterns are the way to go because of the upfront effort and then the recurring, because it's essentially passive income after you create it. Is that why?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. Yes.
Okay.
The same thing like selling digital items. Yes.
Yeah.
It's passive. It's you make money while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What do you think it would take for you to get there to actually accomplish that?
It's self-discipline
Mm.
because I'm just having too much fun. And it's not fun. So I did have a challenge with a girlfriend that if we had to do one pattern every month or we had to give the other one $50, and that was really effective. And my patterns sometimes would go up a minute before midnight on the deadline because we both put out about 8 patterns. We did it for about 8 months. It was really effective because I did not want to give her $50.
Mm. Yeah.
So it just takes a lot of discipline. If somebody, for instance, I don't like being on the computer, and so that's just not fun for me. And but it's really what I should be doing.
So designing your patterns, is that because you use CAD drawings or something? So that's going to keep you on the computer?
Yes.
Okay.
But I don't though. I hand draw them and I give them to someone, and I photograph each step. So my patterns are really geared towards new and young sewers.
Okay.
And I photograph each step, and yeah. Okay. So there's just that. Okay. And it can be done in one day. It's ridiculous that I haven't been doing it. It's like
maybe you'll get hit with the wave of what do you call it? Just the drive to do it one day. You know how sometimes those things just hit you and then you sit down and then you just do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I have a girlfriend that helps me with them, and she's on board. She's ready to do it. And so who knows, maybe it will happen, but it's just not my favorite thing, but it's my regret because I should, have a shop full of them right now. Yeah. For instance, what shop is it? Ginger Melon. So Ginger Melon does little felt critters, and she probably has hundreds of patterns, and they're adorable. And she created an amazing business over the years.
Nice. Okay, I'll look up her shop and link to that too, so others can check out what she's doing. Are there any tools or resources that you found, even if specifically for your craft, that are helpful that you don't mind sharing?
Well, taking classes in whatever your art is, or whatever it is that you want to do, I think is so important. And just being able to keep learning, I think that's probably the number one thing, whatever that is.
Do you take a lot of online classes? So like in a repository like Udemy or Creative Bug, or do you veer more towards in-person classes where you can interact with an instructor?
Both.
Okay.
I went to a doll show and took a rooting class for reborn dolls from a German doll maker. I also flew to Amsterdam for a doll making class, which was amazing. And then right now I'm doing reborns on Patreon, and I'm loving it. And that is Life Effects with Sue Ellen. And that is a fantastic. I'm learning so much from her. And so I just take them whatever. I haven't. Yeah.
Oh, I guess it would depend on, first you would find one that's of interest, and then.
Yep.
And for anyone who isn't familiar, Patreon is a site where people who create things, content creators or makers, can go and make or create whatever it is they create, and then people can pay them for things that they make. Not like Etsy where you buy, but I don't know how to define Patreon, but I'll put a link to Patreon in the show notes for this episode so you can check it out. It's kind of a neat platform.
It is really neat, and it's $10 a month, and she uploads once a week or twice a week or whenever, like a new little class, and you can paint a doll with her from beginning to end.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and she's just brilliant.
What did you say her name is so I can link directly to her channel?
It's Life Effects by Sue Ellen. And I'll have to get that to you.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
All right. So I will put that in the notes for this episode for anyone who wants to look it up. And Reggie, if anyone wants to connect with you and continue this conversation, what's the best way for them to do that?
Either on Etsy or on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed I have a lot more conversations on Etsy right now because I think a lot of people are trying to stay off of Facebook, and during quarantine it can be a bit much. And so I noticed that I have a lot more conversations with people on Etsy. They want to stay off Facebook. And
on Facebook, is your page just Reggie's Dolls?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So easy enough to find.
Yes.
Reggie, thank you so much for sharing about your journey on Etsy. I think it's so unique the way Etsy has panned out for you, in that you're bucking everything that we talk about being the way to do things. And that just goes to show that, there are outliers. And so if things aren't, if you're following the Etsy handbook and maybe things aren't going exactly, the way you expect them to, maybe you're an outlier too. And it might be your clue to follow your own trend and see how that goes, because that seems to have worked for Reggie.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, so I really do appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast and be my guest. I would love to find out what happens like in another year from now. And I assume next year is going to be different because, hopefully COVID will not be a factor, and to see how that affects things, because then you'll get to travel, make more connections and what have you.
And there'll always be new dolls.
And there will always be new dolls. Yes. Thanks again, Reggie. I do appreciate your time. You're welcome. And I thank you for listening to the podcast. If you would like to connect with me, I am on Instagram at ConvoMePodcast. You can also go to the website, convome.com. All the links to everything we've talked about in this episode will be on there. This will be episode 281. And I will be back next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.